Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being part of the show. We have a great show for you today. We have a great interview by the one and only Norman Solomon. Norman Solomon today is going to be talking about, what everybody's talking about over there in the Middle East is very important. I mean, especially since, Biden has this new deal that he thinks he's coming up with. Bruce Pollard said it's 3 p.m. in St. Paul, man. Time for PDR. Oh, are you in St. Paul? Visiting the grandkids. All right, you go, boy. You have a good one. E2247 is in the house. Bruce is in Kingwood, but of course, probably calling in from St. Paul. It's Deb Denny from Indiana. We also have Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. Yvette, I'm sorry for all the water problems you guys are having. I hope it didn't affect you too badly. Did it? Bloomington, Indiana. I know I remembered it. I just saw it. Thank you. Bloomington, Indiana. We also have Michael Rudnin from Brooklyn, New York. And let's see, 2247 from all over. We're going to have a great show for you today. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? I trust everybody is doing just fine. We are going to start. Eric Hayes just made it in. Eric Hayes just said, Katie ISD giving out free breakfast, lunch to children, even if they are not students. Okay. Um, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know. I'm not going to go there. But I want to ask, why is it that we have allowed such a streak of pettiness, selfishness to permeate? A school is giving out free breakfast for kids who need free breakfast. Okay? A school, let's look at the thought process. A school is giving out. I'm hoping, Eric, that you're saying what a very good thing to do, because Jesus would have done that. In fact, Jesus would have turned one school breakfast into enough school breakfasts to feed the entire area. But I can imagine the right wing running with that story. Look at how they're spending your tax dollars to feed starving kids that don't go to the school that we go to. Oh my God. When does it stop? When does the selfishness stop? When does the evil stop? When do you stop allowing those evil people from permeating the minds of people that are otherwise good people? It is about how much hurt you can put on people. That's what the right has become. How much you can hurt somebody else. Madre mía, por favor, carajo. Come on, people. Lee Grant, welcome aboard. Willie Grant is in from Montgomery County and joining us as well. Anyway, we have. I want to start the video early because it's a very good video with Bruce Fuller. Let those who are hungry come and be filled. Exactly. It's what Jesus would do. It's what Christians used to do. But now that we have these evangelical folks that don't, madre mía, madre mía, madre mía. Anyway, let's go ahead. Well, the reason I went ahead and said that, maybe you're right, Eric. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should have clicked it first. I'll start the video and click it before I go off on my attitude. All right. You're right. Actually, Bridge MCP, welcome to Politics and Right from Binghamton, New York. New York. Eric, I'm going to go read it now. Okay. You're right. I should have read it first. You're absolutely right. Anyway, let me go ahead and play that video, and then we'll start after that. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis. Today, we're honored once again to have Norman Solomon, an American journalist, activist, media critic, and the co-founder and national coordinator of rootsaction.org. He is the author of War Made Easy and is a longtime associate of FAIR, which is fairness and accuracy in reporting, his new book, War Made Invisible. Well, it's not new anymore, but it's very important. War Made Invisible, How America Hides the Human Toll of Its Military Machine. It's a must read. You should all get it. Norman, how are you doing this afternoon?
Oh, under the world circumstances, I'm doing fine. And I'm so glad that you keep on keeping on with Politics Done Right.
Well, look, I appreciate that. Now, one of the things that triggered me to talk to you is an excellent article that both you and Abba Solomon wrote, titled "The Dead End of Liberal American Zionism." And beforehand, just for a little bit of context, you are Jewish, correct?
Yes.
And one of the reasons I asked that is, in these times, I think it's so important that as we discuss these subjects, we point out that not because one disagrees with policy somehow makes one anti-Semitic. So before we even get started, I'd like you, as a Jewish person, to explain to the rest of America, because as you know, as a just a plain old humanist, I rather you tell us why it is that we should be questioning things that are occurring right now.
A single standard of human rights is what makes us possible as a real community around the world and wherever we live. If we don't have a single standard, then it's all up for grabs. Propaganda rules, and the rules are made up by people in power and the propaganda that comes flowing at us to try to make some people seem human, which they are, and some people not so human, who really matters and who doesn't. So it really, I think, revolves around a single standard. And that's when the messaging becomes so important. The images, who is put forward as perhaps not so important when they lose their lives.
Well, the first part of this series that I'm doing here, two-part series, will involve in making people understand the formation of Israel, how it came to be, etc. Now, this section of our dialogue is about the after Israel, America's relationship with Israel, and what comes thereafter as we have Gaza. So that's pretty much what I want to discuss today. First of all, what do you see as how do you explain the relationship, this special relationship between America, the United States of America, and Israel?
It's mutually advantageous. Some people will say, well, which tail is wagging which dog? Is it the US government manipulating and running Israel or vice versa? I think it's both. And as is so routine in terms of relations between nation states, what is going on in terms of the motivation and the geopolitical agendas is really being pursued by each country for what they perceive, or I should say often what the elites of those countries perceived as being advantageous. And so Israel's formation, of course, was supported by the United States in 1948 and so forth. And the relationship, while sometimes a bit contentious, has really been that of allies. And we should keep in mind that, for instance, almost a decade ago now, the United States government embarked in this really extraordinary deal, unprecedented, $3.8 billion with a B dollars every year of military aid for 10 years, sort of locked in. And of course, Egberto, as we've seen in the last 7 months, the U.S. has boosted that amount by a large margin, most recently, about $17 billion, again, of military assistance to Israel. So it's an extraordinary outlay of money. And I would sum up that from a military and geopolitical standpoint, these two countries are helping each other in enormous ways. Intelligence gathering, testing out weapons, attacking other countries at times, using, in a sense, the Israeli military as an extension of the United States war machine.
Now, in effect, and tell me if I'm overboard here, but there's no Israel without America?
That's not overboard. As a matter of fact, the stats tell us that at least 80% of the weapons being used by Israel in Gaza in the last 7+ months, 80% coming from the United States. And generals are very clear and have said this publicly in the Israeli military that without US military aid, it would be literally impossible for the Israeli army to do what it has been doing in Gaza.
Now, let me put it this way. Why is it here in America any critique of Israel? Why is it that Biden went and gave Netanyahu that big embrace? Can he not see the implications that have not only locally for a population that is actually that is smarter now to understand these issues, but more importantly, the rest of the world when they see what's going on in Gaza?
Historically, politicians who have wielded power in Washington have bought into and supported the notion that Israel must, at all cost, be backed by the U.S. at the United Nations in terms of military assistance and overall messaging. And so the diplomatic, political, military support that's come from the US has been sort of a reflex. When you look back to the 1970s and 80s in the Senate, for instance, Joe Biden has vehemently said that the United States must support Israel. And part of the messaging is that as the quote unquote Jewish state, it's essential for the United States to support, we're told, Jewish people, and that means supporting Israel. Well, when we look at what the Israeli government has actually done, displacing so many into the millions of Palestinian people from land that their ancestors have occupied for untold centuries, then there has been a rationale. You can't just do ethnic cleansing without having an excuse. Of course, it isn't called ethnic cleansing, which surely by any UN definition and others, that is what the United States has been doing since the 1940s. In Palestine, then there needs to be a messaging pattern that tells people, oh, this is good. It's not a problem at all. And so the core of it, and I think a couple of minutes ago you alluded to this, the core of it is to equate the Israeli government with Judaism, that Jewish people and the Israeli government are synonymous, and that the religious faith of Judaism equals the state of Israel. Once you make that sale, which is absurd, once you make that sale as a propaganda product, then no matter what the Israeli government does, if you criticize it, you're anti-Semitic. Well, that's preposterous, but it's a scam that has been run for decade after decade, not only by the Israeli government, but by many politicians in Washington, by the ADL, the so-called Anti-Defamation League, often a defamation league against Palestinian people, the American Jewish Committee, and a lot of pundits and so forth. So that's where I think we are at this juncture. The war on the people of Gaza, which is slaughter, which is ethnic cleansing, which is by conventional definitions, no matter what Biden says, this is genocide. And to defend the indefensible means to pull out all the heavy artillery of propaganda from the Democrats and Republicans in Congress, with few exceptions, with the pundits and journalists who line up behind Israel no matter what they do, the notion that Israel can't do anything egregious sufficient to withdraw support. And I think that's where we are here as we enter the summer of 2024. We need to have a moral compass that says never again means everyone.
I want to expand on that, but before that, I want to back up a little bit. What has been the justification to remove people from lands, ancestral lands? I mean, it's tantamount to, let's say, the and I sometimes I try to explain this to somebody, and that is, or to some folks. Let's say the Native Americans decided to say, well, by the way, we want back Black Rock, or by the way, we want to go ahead and take back New York City from those who took New York City. They have ancestral rights to that before. What then is the United States justification for, let's say, anybody going into the West Bank or any part and say, we're removing you from this land?
Well, the pseudo justification is under the surface, might makes right. But on top of the surface is, well, Jewish people have a historic biblical ancestry. And so this is a profound refuge after the Nazi Holocaust. And one of the tremendous ironies is that the horrors of the Holocaust, the horrific genocide inflicted on Jewish people and gypsies and homosexuals and others by the Nazi regime, that was genocide that dehumanized other human beings and subtly and directly said that they weren't really people, compared them to insects or whatever. Well, that is now being done by the Israeli government towards Palestinian people. And I think of the Trail of Tears of Native Americans who were displaced from what is now the area of Florida and sent on that journey because of essentially the motivation and the practice of genocide. And when we see what has been happening since last October, where the Israeli government says to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, really 2.2 million Palestinian people in Gaza, many of whom were driven there in the first place when they were kicked out of, often violently, other parts of Palestine. The Israeli government has said repeatedly, you must go from area X to area Y, and then bombs area Y, and then says you must go from area Y to area Z, and then bombs area Z. So this is a methodical effort by the government and the ruling circles, you might say, of Israel to exterminate Palestinian people. I don't say that lightly, but when you look at the use of, for instance, starvation as a weapon of war, it is beyond reprehensible, and yet it is what is going on. And while we've had certain members of Congress, for instance, the Senators Bernie Sanders and Chris Van Hollen, naming it for what it is, overall, we have the so-called leadership of the Democratic and Republican parties in Washington pretending that this isn't really happening.
Now, it is important that, and again, because of our audience, I like to stress this. Bernie Sanders as well is a Jewish man. So, and I don't think people sometimes realize how important it is, so that someone doesn't demagogue what we're talking about here and try to pin it as just being an antiseptic or anti-Semitic discussion. That in this movement, there are a whole lot of Jewish people who are saying, do not do this in my name. Sir.
This is a moral movement, and it has gained great visibility on the college campuses in the last few weeks. As you say, Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists, agnostics, other Americans have worked together to challenge the acceptance, the silence, the de facto shrug coming from top US institutions saying, oh, well, no big deal. No, we're saying this is more than a big deal. This is absolutely unacceptable. And we're going to nonviolently and emphatically push back. That's why there were several thousand arrests on college campuses. We've got now a circumstance where the major leadership of the United States is pretending that the major leadership of Israel is not what it is. And in the article that I co-wrote with Abba Solomon, the death or the end of the
death end of liberal American Zionism.
Yes. And we thought, of course, a lot about the title, The Dead End of American Liberal Zionism, because there's been this dream that somehow there could be a democratic Jewish state. Well, that's an oxymoron right there. We understand.
I am glad you brought that up, Norman, because I was going to ask, one of my questions was going to be, can there be, in fact, a true democracy if you're saying you have a theocratic state, or if for some reason you say that a state has to be Jewish or whatever else, can it really be a democracy? But before I get there, one of the places I wanted to get was the two organizations that you spoke about in that article. There's AIPAC, which is pretty much a right-wing Jewish organization that can see the Israeli government. It's probably an extension of the Israeli government, as well as what I think it's called J Street, that tries to find somewhere in the middle. That, if I read your article appropriately, correctly, you're saying, come on, guys, let's get real. You're trying to do something that's an impossibility.
Yeah, they're trying to square a circle. And there's two wings of this. There's the extreme AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, that is more and more backing Republican candidates. They're backing a lot of candidates this year for Congress who supported the January 6th assault on democracy at the Capitol. And they have one litmus test. If you down the line support Israel, then we will back you. And we will try to take out of Congress or prevent from getting Congress people who raise questions about and challenge the abuse of the basic human rights of Palestinian people by Israel. And then, as this article goes into the dead end of liberal American Zionism, we get into how J Street has, as you say, tried to position itself in the middle. It's been aligned with the Obama administration, with the Biden administration, and it's can't we all get along? It's let's have a thriving democratic Jewish state and a two-state solution for Palestinians. But we don't get to have, unfortunately, the Israel in a fantasy, what our article calls like the gaslit fantasy of what Israel is. We have the reality of Israel, which is fascistic. I don't say that lightly. When you look at what is happening now, the overwhelming support among Israeli people for continuing to slaughter civilians in Palestine, in Gaza, and also the increasing vigilante activity in the West Bank. This is not an exaggeration. This is the worst days of Jim Crow in that region of the West Bank. It is like the Klan, the KKK running the region. We have these racist, these vicious, ethnocentric fanatics who have free reign now, and they're terrorizing people in the West Bank because they're Palestinian. These are Jewish nationalist extremists. So I get back to that core. There's a saying in the blues, you might feel like you're getting lost, but you won't if you know the blues. In all this politics, we might feel like we're getting lost if we lose our moorings. There's such a crossfire of political rhetoric and propaganda and accusations and falsehoods. But if we stick to the core of a consistent standard for human rights, we won't get lost.
I think your voice is so important and I think must be heard. Unfortunately, it's only being, well, I shouldn't say unfortunate because, we are the truth. I mean, it's not getting the airwaves that it should be getting elsewhere in our mainstream media. I don't think I've seen you on MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, or any one of these places recently.
It's been many years. When I was attacking the Bush administration, I was getting on places like C-SPAN or MSNBC. We have not a consensus. There's some cracks in the walls, but sort of a circling the wagons, so to speak, by the pro-Israel forces. And not that they all agree with each other, but it's not only the Jewish Zionists, it's the Christian Zionists who arguably even have more effect on U.S. foreign policy. There's a particular, I think, convoluted but very often heartfelt belief among Christian Zionists that you need to support Israel because of Jesus and the New Testament and what it says about Palestine. And so there's this confluence, you might say, of motivations. So you've got the Jewish Zionists, you've got the fanatical right-wing Christian Zionists who, ironically enough, many of them pal around with and build alliances with anti-Semites,
yes,
with neo-Nazis. But frankly, that's not too surprising. It's not out of sync with what the Israeli government has done. And just in a nutshell, if you go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the Israeli government has been aligned with some of the most vicious, racist, horrific, repressive regimes on the planet. In Guatemala, Rios Mott's regime, South African apartheid regime, Pinochet in Chile, and on and on. We've had this record of Israel saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and whatever happens, we're going to align ourselves with some of the most terrible regimes on the planet if only we can cut a deal. And I think that's happening now
With
There's a
Saudi
strong
Arabia.
effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right, like 3 seconds ahead of me there.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is a great, there's tremendous messaging now coming out of Washington and Israel. We've got to cool our jets a little bit in Gaza, sandpaper the rough edges, at least in terms of the image, so that the Arab street, so to speak, won't be so outraged to prevent the Saudi dictators to cut a deal with Israel. And we're told that's supposed to be a good thing. You know, there's been the so-called Abraham Accords, where the U.S. broker deals with some of the what do you call them? The sheikdoms, the oil, tiny little countries run by these vicious dictatorship oligarchs in the region that just are rich from oil that they rip off the rest of their population. They get incredibly billionaire rich. And ironically enough, it's called the Abraham Accords. And Abraham, if we remember that story early in the Old Testament, Abraham is the first Jew, we're told, and then there's Isaac, and then there's Jacob. Okay, well, there's the story of Isaac, where Isaac, according to the Bible, is told by God to kill his own son. And that's supposed to be a good thing. We have these deep intersections between geopolitical agendas that are often so vicious and so cruel, with an alliance with theocratic beliefs in this, that, or the other.
You know, coming close to the end here, I want to ask you about the ICC recommendation for the arrest of both Netanyahu and the leaders of Hamas. And I tell you something, the thing that amused me the most, and I really got amused, when somehow what really bothered the Israeli government was that Netanyahu was placed on the same plank as Hamas. Yeah. And, people got, they were disdain. They were virtually going on a fit. How can you put Netanyahu in the same plane with a terrorist? Well, actually, I think maybe by the numbers and by the actions, he may be a bit worse. Your thoughts on what's going on with the ICC and whether Europe, who are most of them are signatories, we the United States are not signatories of it, but Europe, most of those countries in Europe are. What do you think is going to be the outcome? Or what do you think?
Pressure, that truth telling from the ICC about these two organizations is very important. And of course, immediately denounced not only by the Israeli government, but by the White House. The reality is that in this conflict, there have been two terrorist organizations, Hamas and the Israeli government. And one of the ironies is that when Zionist organizations and very quickly President Biden and, of course, the Israeli leaders, they all cry foul. This is absurd, they say. How is it possible to give any moral equivalency to Hamas and Israel? Well, if anything, when you look at the magnitude of the crimes, obviously Israel has committed a vastly larger magnitude of crimes. I mean, 1,200 people massacred. That is a terrible crime by Hamas, caused it to happen on October 7th. That should be unequivocally condemned. 1,200 plus 240 hostages, all a terrible crime against humanity. Then we look at 35,000 Palestinians slaughtered in the last 7 months by the Israeli government with U.S. armed support. Most of those 35,000 children and women. Again, we need a single standard of human rights.
And then you destroy the infrastructure for continued survival. Schools, hospitals, plants, factories, all gone. How does a society survive? Now that in a lot of ways, in my opinion, is what called collective punishment, a crime against humanity, as well as almost a ticket to say, we leave you nothing here, you've just got to go.
It's a textbook, horrific textbook instance, history in real time of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And the denial coming from the top of the US government really tells us a lot about the capacity of a society to whistle past a graveyard that they are filling with human beings. They are putting out a welcome mat for the Grim Reaper and then saying how much they value human life.
That is sad. Now, before I ask the last question, which you know what it is, what should I have asked you that I didn't? I want to make one statement, and that is, people wonder why we are not signatories to these things like the ICC, etc. Israel looks at America, and many times Israel have to say, "How are we doing anything differently than you've done?" I'm from Panama, Central America, and America wanted to get one person, Manuel Antonio Noriega. And for that, depending on which sources you got, 1,000, 4,000, or 10,000 Panamanians got killed in the process. Indiscriminate bombing to get one guy. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
Well, that's an instance of what unfortunately has been a pattern, modern, recent decades of gunboat diplomacy, where, among other things, the U.S., meanwhile, poses as the victim, as the righteous sheriff of the hemisphere. Drug dealing? Well, the U.S. Worked with Noriega until it didn't because of the geopolitical shifting of alliances in Central America. And I remember at that time when the first President Bush and the mass media in the U.S. on the whole said, oh, the U.S. has been victimized. The wife of a U.S. Navy officer, just an incident along the canal or something with one person. Oh, now we're the victims, and this is really something that has happened time and again. Where, let's remember, for instance, the United States presented itself as the victim in Vietnam. We were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin. We're just defending ourselves. And we're seeing this again and again, including in the Middle East. So I think what we've been talking about, which is so important to put in context, really is part of a broad pattern where the United States makes an effort to say, by its actions, we have the right to work our will on the world. And something I would sort of close on as a sort of overarching point is that Secretary of State Antony Blinken and President Biden in the last 3+ years have often talked about what they call the rules-based order. You say, for instance, you can't have, for Russia to Ukraine, you can have one country going around invading another. These people who support invading Afghanistan, attacking Libya, invading Iraq, and so forth. It is do as we say, not as we do. It's a, quote, rules-based order that really means we make the rules and we break the rules.
Norman Solomon, an American journalist, activist, media critic, and the co-founder and national coordinator of rootsaction.org. And remember, the author of War Made Invisible, How America Hides the Human Toll of Its Military Machine. Go get that book. Educate ourselves. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely love that guy. Norman Solomon always nails it. I have another piece to play. Egberto, thanks for your effort and your work to construct this fine interview with Norman. Yeah, I had Abba Solomon last week, who sort of gave us the how Israel came to be, and what I wanted to have Norman do is take the second part to move from there on. So it was very important. Let's see what else we have here. I tell you what, I did a piece over the weekend that I want to play. It's about, are the Democrats squandering that conviction of Donald Trump? I think so. I think it could be a learning experience for America if we played it right. So here's what I did over the weekend. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side. Americans have been conditioned to have a short attention span, to be consumed by entertainment. In other words, entertain, feed, and make things not too complicated. So we have a party that have strived on what the external powers have done to the psyche of the minds of many Americans. And that is, we have flooded the market with cheap, bad food. We've also made sure we have all well-funded reality programs and short-term programs that just have you sit back and not have to do any kind of critical thinking. And anytime we move towards critical thinking, or every time we move towards really getting the attention of Americans, something comes up, some movement comes up to kill it. We have the burn the book movement. We have the false DEI movement. We have all these other movements that come about to conflate things and, again, use that cultivated shallowness in the thinking of many that we taught how to do from schooling, elementary school, and right up. Well, right now, the president has been convicted on 34 charges. And we for this short period of time, we have the Americans' mind. In other words, for the next few days, they will be concentrating on, hey, Trump has been convicted on all charges. And what the Republican Party, the right wing, and MAGA knows very well is if you jump ahead and you go ahead and start the narrative, whether false or not, whether true or not, what you do is you put that seed into the minds of people. Well, that's what, as soon as that verdict came out, every single Republican, major or otherwise, they were singing from the same playbook. They were singing from the same hymn or hymnal. Okay? Now, what I would expect is that the progressives and Democrats who have the wherewithal to be on network TV. I know everything isn't done on network TV anymore. We have a whole lot of avenues, including this platform here by yours truly. I intend to do my part to really set the message. But there's just so much a small independent network can do, right? The big boys, the ABC, CBS, NBCs, MSNBCs, Fox News, all these guys, they have right now, because everybody wants to hear the latest about this conviction just for a little while, because they're going to go back and watch their reality-based programs. You have them at this moment to set a tone. And for every single big politician, senator, congressperson, or someone running for these positions, whenever they come out and give that great defense on network TV, immediately the counter shouldn't just be, they're saying the judge is corrupt. They gave the wrong messages to the jury, and also that somehow they don't know exactly what the crime is that the former president committed. That's fine. That narrative can stick in a vacuum. But immediately, that opens the door for every single Democrat to go out there, and while they're answering the question, saying, first of all, the jury, it's a jury who convicted. Secondly, the judge is a well-respected judge. But let me ask you all something. For a person who has slept with a porn star, having a pregnant wife, that's who you're defending? For somebody who defrauded some of your own constituents by having them believe they were going to a real university and defrauding them of their hard-earned dollars, is that who you're defending? For someone who established a charity supposedly to do good and instead used the money of that charity in their homes to buy things for themselves, is that who you're defending? For someone who went ahead and, as said by a judge, raped a woman, any one of these women could be your daughters, your mothers, your sisters, your aunts. Is that who you're defending? Is that who you're putting yourself on the line for? And the guy who stiffed the small contractors, like many of your constituents, as they did work for him, they took money out of the mouths of many of his constituents, even as he claimed to be a billionaire. Is that who you're defending? So as you defend this person, as you defend this person who was just convicted, not just by a liberal set of jurors, but one juror was a Truth Social reader. He could have been the person who hung the jury. Another juror got his news from Fox News. He could have been the one who hung the jury. But nobody did that because you know why? They saw the evidence outside of the color of Fox News or MSNBC, looked at it, and said guilty as charged. And should we remind you that every time Donald Trump came up in a civil trial thus far, he has lost for raping a woman. He has lost for defrauding the government on taxes. He has lost. So that is who you're defending. That is who you want to revolt for. Be my guest. America, that is who your leaders are telling you you should go to bat for. Is that what, for those of you who are religious, believe? For those of you who believe in the sanctity of life, for those of you who believe in law and order, for those of you who believe in all these different issues, is that where you are going to lay the line? I want you to think about what happens 10 years down the road when people wake up and say, oh my God, could this be the person we laid the line on? Every Democrat should have a prose that I just gave, a 30-second version, a 60-second version, a 2-minute version, and a 5-minute version. That should be in the next few days. That is what every American needs to hear. And you know what? You may not be able to say this in a 5-minute version on Fox News, but you can get the 30-minute version on Fox News. You can get the 60-minute version on Fox News. You can get the 2-minute version on MSNBC. You can get the 5-minute version on MSNBC. You can get the 2-minute version on CNN. But guess what? Crickets, we continue to take a knife to a gun battle. We still have a few more days to correct this. Let's get it done.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.
Absolutely join. Absolutely join. I think somebody was just trying to call into the show. You can call in now. We were still doing the videos, but you can call in now, and we'll be more than happy to get you on air. Give us a call. Again, the number is 281-823-7747. Again, that number is 281-823-7747. If you want to call in and say something. Eric Hayes says, Politics Done Right with Egberto Willis. Will defend the current leader? Okay, who Politics Done Right says support? I don't know what that means. Will this be discussed? Is he guilty of other things? Keeping classified lying to the public? I don't know what you're talking about. But anyhow, let's go ahead and take this call. All right, is this Theodore? Theodore? Come on in. What's up?
Yeah, couple of things. One thing, as a retired correctional officer, I am astonished at how similar Trump sounds to the punk kids I used to work with. You know, man, they didn't like me. It's not my fault, you know. Exactly the same. He sounds exactly the same.
You know, that what is so scary. Theodore, let me tell you what is scary to me of Donald Trump. This guy is an immature, I'll be as kind as I can, but he is an immature imbecile. And that he has such a following just surprises me. it really does surprise me that he's able to get such a following, knowing so little, but just because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Go ahead, Theodore.
Well, yeah, I agree 100%. It's just astonishing. And the people who support him, they just don't know anything. I mean, a lot of them don't even know that he was convicted. I was I was talking to some people at a pizza place, just kind of and they didn't know that he'd been convicted, some of them, and then I made some jokes about, whether I'd buy the sneakers, but I wouldn't buy the Bible because it's satanic, and they didn't know about that. I was just astonished at the level of ignorance.
Well, again, the problem is not just,
possible.
the problem is there is a whole infrastructure on the right that is designed to mislead. I don't blame my right-wing brothers and sisters. In fact, I have relatives that are MAGA relatives, and it's amazing because when I hear the things that I told a relative recently about, right now the thing about it is to attack trans. Trans are the end of the world. All these bad things about trans, right? How trans are going to be a danger to your kid, all that sort of stuff. So there is this lawyer, a trans lawyer, that decided to put it to the test. And what they did is they started to aggregate all crimes against children throughout the country. And it turns out, I think they found one trans that had any close effect on any kid. But the subgroup that had one of the largest what should I say, the largest abuse of kids, the sexual abuse of kids, the largest one. What group do you think that was? Evangelical Christians.
Well,
It was pastors. It One of the most dangerous places for your kid is in that evangelical church. It's amazing. But when you don't, nobody does the data, right? When you don't do the data, you can come out and they can tell you anything and you can believe it, and you can blame people for things that they shouldn't be blamed for. So that is what's so important.
Well, yeah. And of course, as you said before, the Republicans have nothing to offer except for rich people, so they have to play on the fears of the ignorance. They have to tell them that these big, terrible trans boogeymen from south of the border are going to come here and take over the bathrooms. Yeah, I think there's I may be wrong, but I think according to the AMA, there are exactly 700 people under the age of 18 on puberty blockers, and I think there's only like 1,300,000 people that are transmorphic or whatever the I don't remember what the disease or whatever it is called, but they have this problem where they have to have to go through the physical transformation. It's only like 1 million or maybe 2 million people out of 300 million. I mean, how can you be that scared?
Again, it is what they do. And Lee Grant is accusing me of Christian bashing. I am not. I'm not Christian bashing. I'm just calling what is actually occurring. Nothing more. The people who are attacking trans right now, the people who are putting fear into a lot of your congregations, it's not generic Christians. It's a particular sect within the Christian, and Norman Solomon spoke about that as well. It's not at all talking against Christians. I have a lot of relatives that are Christians. Come on. Some of them are MAGA as well. But anyway, Theodore, anything else you want to say before we move on?
No, not really. But the one thing I do know about the people who abuse children is that they were abused themselves.
Right.
And they carry it on. It's a very complicated subject. I can't go on it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, look.
All right.
Theodore, thank you for calling.
Okay. Talk. Bye.
You have a wonderful rest of your day, my brother. All right, folks, it's amazing. By the way, if you see me a little weak today, I this is the second day of my fast. I decided to do sort of a I had I have to do something to curb weight gain, and I wrote the book. That I wrote the book about how I did it, and I'm just doing it again. Lose weight and be fit. Lose weight and be fit now. I put on a few pounds over since Washington D.C., spending time with my daughter in Washington when I went to take care of her, and I haven't gotten a chance to take it off, and instead, some of it has crept back on. So we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, and weight is a big factor. So that's what I'm doing right now. I am actually Ed Young. You will be happy to know retired. Ed Young needs to go. He's an evil person. But anyway, let's go ahead and close this baby out. Persuasive Barrier says there's a long history of religion abusing kids, from indigenous to slavery to modern kids, with abuse being covered up. You are so right. Anyway, folks, we got to start getting out of here. And how do we do that? I want to ask all of you that are listening to consider becoming supporters of Politics Done Right. And how can you become a supporter of Politics Done Right? It's very easy to become a supporter of Politics Done Right. Just go to Politics Done. Michael McAndrews, welcome. Persuasive Barrier, welcome. It's very easy. Just go to politicsdoneright.com slash first of all, if you want to see all of our social media platforms and all the places that we post, go to politicsdoneright.com/info. You get turned on to the entire Willie's Media LLC infrastructure that we are trying to do as a progressive medium to pump the information out, to make sure that we are not saturated by right-wing stuff, right? Now, if you want to support us, there's an all-encompassing link, politicsdoneright.com. Thank you, Barbara Wills, for being a wonderful supporter. Appreciate you. Go to politicsdoneright.com/support. It's an all-encompassing place to support. But what I'm looking for are two things specifically. I want more patrons if you can. politicsdoneright.com/patron. Consider going there. Patreon is how that patron is spelled. politicsdoneright.com/patron. I'd like as many as of you as possible to do us a coffee a month at our newsletter. Consider subscribing to our newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. We need to build that so badly. Now you can get all of the books at politicsdoneright.com/books. But again, I urge you, please consider becoming subscribers to our newsletter, what I call paid subscribers to our newsletter. That is how we can continue doing this. We are, I think, 3 people away from, I believe. Thank you, Persuasive Barrier, for supporting us through the YouTube channel. I think we're three persons away from reaching 100 paid supporters on our newsletter. Thank you, Mr. McAndrews. Thank you so kindly for supporting with that super chat. I appreciate you so kindly for that super chat, Mr. McAndrews. But like I said, we have over 9,000 something followers and subscribers to the Egberta Off the Record newsletter. And we have, of those, 97 that are paid subscribers. If we could get 1,000, I could get some help to do all this work. If you go to politicsdoneright.com/info, you see the amount of work that causes me to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because we have to do this. We have to get the information out. That is the only way we can counter what's happening on the right. That is the only way we can build society the way it's supposed to be. So I'm just one cog in a lot of people trying to do this. So I ask you for your support. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Become a subscriber. Very, very easy. Anyway, I got to get out of here. It's 3:59, and I got to go and get some more stuff done. Second day of my fast. One more day to go. I end my fast tomorrow, And when I end that fast tomorrow, Eric says I need to hire more AI bots. AI can only go so far. I use AI for a lot of things. AI to program when certain things go up, etc. But when it comes to writing blogs, AI can only give ideas as far as certain things, but it has to come from yours truly, yours truly. Anyway, folks, gotta go. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? What am I? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.